Are you ready to go? Okay. Madam City Administrator, hi. Uh, We're gonna, okay,
Recording in progress.
very good. I call to order this meeting of the Public Safety Committee dated March 27th, 2024. Roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka.
Here.
Alderwoman Sims.
Here.
Alderman Lockmiller.
Here.
Alderman Erger.
Here.
All members present.
Thank you, Kelly. Agenda item number 2 is the approval of the agenda. Is there anybody that wishes to make a change in the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda will stand as submitted. Our third item is citizen comments. Are there any citizens either in the audience here or online who wish to make some comment with regard to public safety in the city of Brentwood? If so, you'll be given 3 minutes.
There's no one online.
Okay, thank you. I'll declare the citizen comment section closed and move on to reports of committee chair and alderman. As chairman, I do not have a report. Alderwoman Sims, sorry. No report. Thank you. Alderman Lockmiller.
No report.
And Alderman Erger.
No report.
Thank you. Item number 5 is the city administrator's report. Okay. We are down to the departmental reports. We'll start with our police department. Officer Simpson. You bet.
So I'll do the best I can here. I was kind of told I was going to be at this meeting at the last minute. The chief apologizes, but he has some personal things going on in his world right now. And he asked me to bring up our new special assignment unit that has been out on the street. As you recall, this unit was put together for the nighttime crime details with the ordinance that we approved for spiking. And I talked about this last night at Alderman Lockmuller's ward meeting. And just to give you some stats here, since February 12th, and actually beginning of the first of the year, our nighttime crime has not been bad. We haven't had a whole lot of nighttime crime. So what we did is we transitioned that group from nighttime crime to basically enforcing in our retail units, retail areas. As you know, our retail areas get hit frequently, every day. So what they've done is 386 enforcement stops. Those can be traffic stops or ped checks. They've issued 170 traffic citations. They've made 31 arrests. There's been 19 canine deployments. They've seized 3 guns, 2 knives, made 3 drug violation arrests, and I have a couple notable arrests here, and I'll try and speak off the cuff about some of these. We got a call one day for a cutting up at McDonald's. They responded to that area. 2 groups were in an argument, and one of the individuals cut on his neck. They actually intervened in that whole process, were able to get warrants for assault first. There was another incident at Home Depot where the loss prevention agent tried to stop someone from walking out with a power tool. The suspect pulled out a knife and said he was going to cut the loss prevention agent. So they did some investigation. They actually set up surveillance down in St. Louis City and were able to effect that arrest within 24 hours. And then the list goes on and on there. So they've been doing a lot of good work. If we do start experiencing nighttime crime, they will certainly transition to that.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions on the committee? Steve?
Have you had any need to deploy your spikes yet?
Not yet.
Okay.
We have not. We have not yet.
All right, thanks.
Anybody else have any questions? Thank you. Thank you, officer. Fire department. Chief?
Good evening.
Hey.
Have a few items to highlight under department update. First is a recent alarm we had last Friday. Interesting event that happened in this building. It is a manufacturing facility. They do have a research and development portion within that building. I give props to our building codes and the systems in that building. We had a significant fire in that building, I believe it was 2007, went to multiple alarms, and then after they rehabbed that building and reopened it, the systems saved that building this time. Activated 2 sprinkler heads, which is pretty significant heat. We're talking about a lab fire to extend the heat that far away. So extensive electronics damage from the sprinklers that were far enough away from the fire itself. So I just wanted to share that. There was a lot of positives on the backside of that. That company has hired a private firm to help with some lab training following that fire. So we've been working with them pretty closely with their insurance. This next topic, there's a lot of information here. I'm going to do my best to wrap concisely. So I've spoken at some prior meetings regarding some issues kind of in the region with EMS, ambulance responses, homeless population, increasing responses, private ambulances not being available because they're in St. Louis City running calls because St. Louis Fire Department doesn't have enough ambulances. So it's just a whole bunch of challenges colliding together. We had a very positive moment at our most recent fire chiefs meeting. Mercy Hospital did a presentation. They have a waiver from Medicare where they had, in September, they've been admitting certain patients that qualify as Mercy patients, but back into their home. They are currently the only entity, hospital, doing that in the St. Louis region, but BJC has applied to do it as well. We see this multiplying. We see our paramedics responding into homes that the patient may be truly admitted to the hospital. This is a good thing. We think this is going to slow down on emergency room admissions. But I also believe it presents additional opportunities for us. How can our people treat patients in their home? So that's why I say all of that. And we have to make a decision with our medical direction for our ambulance service. We'll be prepared at next month's meeting to bring a recommendation. We are still evaluating that. We have met with all the hospital groups in St. Louis. But with change, I think we are definitely being presented with some great opportunities. I will say, and we'll discuss it more at April, I wasn't for sure how much these hospital systems were going to charge for medical direction services. And I will say, we've received quotes from all of them, and the highest quote is $15,000 a year. I thought it was going to be much higher than that, but that's the highest one we've received. So much further detail in the month of April once we're able to make a recommendation. I know that was a lot of information kind of back and forth. Is there any questions on the EMS? Thanks. Our fire apparatus order, so we signed the agreement October of 2022. We were notified, it was in January. Our delivery date is questionable for December of 2025. So I met with Michelle, our finance director, and what's our best course of action. I'm proposing to our dealer for the fire truck, just say, we'll pay for this thing in January of 2026. If you finish it in October of 2025, we're paying for it in January. I think that gives us our best avenue for budgeting such a large capital item and then potentially not receiving it in 2025. So we want to try to avoid that hurdle there. I know I missed, I believe, the last meeting where Assistant Chief discussed the PFAS on our foam. And at the same time of the fire apparatus order, State Fire Marshal notified us that day. The state put out the survey, and the Department of Natural Resources has the funds to collect and dispose of this foam, but they're in the data collection phase right now to see how much they are dealing with statewide. In the first weekend, they surpassed 20,000 gallons of foam they have to dispose of, and they were less than 1/4 of the departments responding. So, but fortunately, Missouri DNR is helping out with that. Questions? I think that's all on department update.
Does anybody have any questions? I have one question. So remind me what the outlay is for the new equipment in '26.
So the Fire truck itself, the agreement is $1,093,000.
Okay.
We budgeted 1.2 million, with the remaining balance going for the loose equipment to fit the truck.
Right. And then if that agreement is acceptable to them in terms of the payment, will they then delay delivery until January?
Potentially, but
That's not going to be a problem for us and the equipment we have?
no. So once the truck leaves the plant in Wisconsin, it comes to Missouri and it goes to the dealer's shop. And if it is at that location for a few weeks, that is kind of the understanding. That may be what we have to do until payment is made in January.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Anybody else? Thank you very much, Chief. Dan? Public Works?
Okay, I have several miscellaneous just projects here. The first one, Manchester Road, the crosswalk signs and beacons, the additional ones, those are up. The ones that MoDOT put up, I know at least by the shop there at Cecilia, it's functional because I've seen people cross there. So it blinks on both sides simultaneously so that whether you're going eastbound, westbound, you see it on opposing sides. So that's done. I know the pavers were redone. I know TWM went out there, they measured it, as well as Navigate. Everything meets ADA, so no more work there. Pavers are done. Skipping over to high school at Brentwood, we did put up that solar-powered LED stop sign. So if you stop at that four-way, you'll see one of those corners has the blinking stop sign. Brentwood Boulevard lane closures. Missouri American, they stopped their water main relocation temporarily because they ran into an unforeseen pipe, a concrete pipe that they said. So they're trying to figure out how to address that. I know right now, I was just out there earlier today, they've got the hole plated. So there's a 16-foot by 40-foot bore pit on one side. And then on the other side of the track, the south side of the tracks, there's a smaller receiving pit. So what they've done is they just left the excavation, but they put plates over it so you can't fall in there, and they have barricades around it. But the date of April 5th is questionable, so we're trying to figure out what they could do if, just to reopen that, because I mean, right now, if you're heading southbound, you can't make that left-hand turn because you have barricades there. It goes down to single lane in each direction. So I wouldn't try to drive over the plates. You know, I want to see what they discuss and try to offer to try to figure out how to get from one side to the other. Because it also makes it difficult if you park along Russell and you try to walk across Brentwood Boulevard, you can't because the barricades are right in front of you. More to follow on that one. Madge Avenue, we called in locates. We have the one that we already had in stock, the speed cushion. We were going to try to do that today. We'll probably do it later this week. And if not this week, then for sure next week, since we had some sanitation folks to cover for. But we're ready to do that. I already ordered the replacement, so that'll be here around May 7th is what they projected. So just so we always have one in stock, because it's usually an 8 or so week lead time to get these in stock, and I don't want to wait. Temporary signage near Dorothy. We haven't put that up yet, but I know nobody's parking there. We make it a point to drive through there, and ever since the apartment complex was notified, nobody's parked in that intersection of Van Mark and Dorothy, so that's a good thing. But we can still put the signs up, and then if we need to, then we would bring back a change to the no parking schedule, 3A, with that particular area. But right now, no one's violating it. You know, for a while there, it seemed like every day, but the cars, they're either going somewhere else or they're just not parking.
Is that,
Yeah, that's all
Okay.
I have.
do you have questions, Steve?
Yeah, I think I might still look at that temporary signage because, especially like the event we're having on April
Right.
6th, if people park there and then the fire truck is having a hard time making that turn,
Yeah, we could put the signs up before then.
Other questions? I was going to say the exact same thing, that I realized, and made a point to drive by a couple of times myself and didn't see anybody in there either, which is great news. But with an event like that coming up, when it's not going to be people from the apartment complex, but just folks that want to go to the event or any event.
can I say?
Yeah.
At our ward meeting, there were some old timers there that said that that used to be no parking all along there. I know those might have just been thrown up
I
at
think they
will
were,
at one
yeah.
point, but by ordinance, there really is no parking signs supposed to be there.
Thank you very much. All right. We have only the meeting minutes on the consent agenda. Everybody have a chance to take a look at those? And more importantly, do you have any changes to make to the meeting minutes? Seeing none, they will stand as submitted. We have no old business. Under new business, we have several items. The first is an emergency operations plan approval. Is that coming from fire or police or from you, Bola? Do you know? Okay.
Jim McIntyre, who's the city's management analyst, was working on this when he was interim police chief, major, and this is just housekeeping, which is the next step, requiring that the city formally adopt an emergency operations plan. Like what we do with most things when we collaborate together with other municipalities, we found that there were other cities who had already adopted something similar to this, so we reviewed it for compliance with the city of Brentwood. So the request is for your consideration that we have a formal emergency operations plan that we would put into effect in the event that we would have need to use it.
It is, I mean, I will say, if anybody on the committee has any questions or wants to ask about the preparation of it, Steve?
I know Jim's not. When I noticed in there that the mayor becomes the information, doesn't?
Go ahead, I'm listening.
And there was different directors of departments have different responsibilities. But with him being the information officer, I didn't see anything regarding our communications director offering support or anything of that nature underneath.
Right, it's a combination effort. When it involves public safety, it tends to be the PIO officer, public information officer, from the police department that would speak, as if you remember some of the other incidents that we would have. But the communications manager would support the police department, and depending on the severity of the situation, the mayor always is there to speak along with, whether it's the chief of police or the fire chief. I see the chief nodding, everybody nodding. So maybe we take another look at this and add all the supporting players in there because they have a more critical role. So it's a combination. It would be the mayor and the chief. Or I know that in the past, Jim has been the spokesperson when he was a police officer. He would be the spokesperson, not necessarily the chief, but I'm certain that Joe, is our Chief Spees, would be the spokesperson when something happened, as he has been when we've had other situations. So I'd like to take it back and talk to the department and amend that, and then bring it back.
And then so this would be pulled off the shelf for like when we had the 1,000-year flood. That's where this would come into play.
It could be, but where if Major Simpson would be recognized, when we had the situation at Drury, it was the police department that took the lead and became the spokesperson. So I think more so for public safety situations like that. When we had the flooding, we didn't do major press release or meetings with the media saying don't travel this route. I remember when Manchester used to flood a lot, the police department would be out there directing traffic. And if a reporter happened to come by, then they would talk about what was going on. But I would think it's more true public safety issues, that really involve police or fire, not so much flooding. You want Chief Cottrell, if
Yeah,
you
please.
recognize
I
it?
had a question about it too, to follow up, like, for instance, the ammonia leak
That's
at the
true.
rec center.
So that was a public safety issue, but at the time, the city brought in a communications consultant.
Okay.
and provided guidance to the chief.
Yeah.
And remember, we also had the PIO officer from the St. Louis City Fire Department, so it was a combined effort. We didn't have a communications manager at the time. So depending on the situation, it's a combined effort. All the city's communication folks, communications manager, city administrator, mayor, and the police chiefs would jointly talk before we would, provide information to the media. That's how we've handled it in the past.
So is the expectation that, as Steve said a minute ago, that this would be sitting on the shelf and we get a call into City Hall that says there's an ammonia leak across the street at the rec center and this comes off the shelf and people start paging through, or
No,
no?
I think we need to be familiar with it.
Yeah.
It's not just on the shelf. We read and when things happen, we don't have time to be thumbing through a book.
Okay.
We should hopefully know it.
Yeah, so I'd like to add, thank you.
Yeah.
These plans are designed to expand and contract based on the size and complexity of an incident. But more specifically, they're truly implemented once it's a long-term, long-duration incident. So greater than a 12-hour period, or multiple operational periods are the terms that we use. So lasting 3, 4, 5 days, those types of events where these would be implemented.
So can you give us an example of that kind of an event?
Absolutely. An earthquake,
Okay.
a tornado coming through and affecting Brentwood, a long-term power outage. Experienced those in the summertime before, where widespread power outage for multiple days with 100-degree temp.
Okay. I was just gonna add, so, and anybody else can chime in too, but my review of it was it is hard to digest. I mean, it is hard. I was trying to think of, okay, if I was using this, where would I go to get, quick information as to what my role is and what I should be doing?
As an
and things like
alderman?
that. No, I meant if I were in the police department or in the, so I mean, is it designed to be that this document can be trained from? Okay. And used by our police and fire?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely. And we currently train to these guidelines already,
okay,
filling in these roles. Leading up to Brentwood Days each year, we do a variation of training internally every year, preparing for that event.
and you wanna take this back?
Right,
for-
make some edits based on the feedback that we got today.
Steve?
Well, if you're going to do that, I'd also look, because Eric acts as a director of parks and as assistant administrator.
Right?
And I think there's roles for both those designations. So I don't know if that would be a conflict, not so much a conflict, but does that put too much burden on him?
No, I think the role that he would function as a assistant city administrator would be if the city administrator is not present.
Exactly.
Right.
But then he's also got his role as running the Parks Department during that period of time. So I don't know.
He
if-
stepped into that in the past and does it well.
Always does.
But in those cases, all of the positions are allowed to assign deputies to assist in various roles.
And then when you mentioned tornadoes, so now it's over a wider range of areas. Where does the county, does the county executive then say, well, no, this isn't a local, this is a regional disaster, and how does that layer on?
Yeah, it's complicated, number one. Yes, there's notification from the local level to the county level. That has to occur first. Then the county is the one that notifies the state to request the state assistance, which happens, unfortunately, on a regular basis with the floods, which has escalated to FEMA's involvement. So we have already practiced those steps, and I feel like we do it pretty seamlessly already.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you. Anybody else have any with regard to that plan? Thank you very much. Thank you, Bola. The next item is funding for the fire training facility.
I'm going to start this comment with, to the Chair of Ways and Means, all due respect, this will be presented at our next Ways and Means Committee meeting. This is a timing matter, is why I presented it here tonight first, before we go to Ways and Means, on the basis that the other 3 participating cities have already approved their expenditures for their fiscal years as amendments, similar to what I'm seeking tonight. So with the addition of Maplewood into the training consortium and the assistance of Navigate Building Solutions, they've provided a cash flow projection to begin pre-construction services and design for the fire training facility. And for fiscal year 2024, we do not have any funds allocated for this. And speaking with the finance director, this would be a budget amendment with the funds coming from capital expenditures. And so we are asking for $40,562.50 for our portion of the design fees for 2024.
So given the expenditure involved here, are we, as a committee, we're being asked to recommend or not recommend it to the full board consideration, which would be in April, presumably after Ways and Means? Okay. So with that in mind, is there a discussion? Is there a motion to approve the funding as outlined in the memorandum? It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion with regard to this? And the motion is to recommend that the board, that the full board approve this, this funding timing, I guess. Okay. The budget amendment would be required, right? Okay, to approve this expenditure. All right. Okay,
Fire Training Center.
okay. Any further discussion?
I just have a
Yeah.
clarification. I think it was said, but I just wanted to emphasize. So I love it when other committees weigh in on this kind of stuff. Because I want to, I think it helps Ways and Means, when we're having to make those decisions about spending money that, other committees thought this was good. In terms of where we find the money and how we find the money, we'll kick those tires.
At Ways and Means, yes.
Michelle is prepared for presentation on that.
All right, that's all I had.
Okay. Hearing no further discussion, roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderman Erger?
Yes.
Motion carries by a vote of 4-0.
Thank you. Item C is, it still involves the fire department, and it's the compressor and filling station, the bid package from Sentinel Emergency Solutions for the compressor and filling station in conjunction with the Eureka Fire Protection District. These are the air tanks that firefighters wear on their backs?
Correct. So this is the breathing air compressor that generates filters and then compresses the air into our cylinders that we wear. Our current station, filling station and compressor is at end of life. We've had major repairs done to it, so we need to replace it. Eureka Fire Protection District performed an RFP last fall, and we are piggybacking on that RFP, as did some of our neighboring municipalities. Ladue and Maplewood did as well. And so this is, well, prior to the last vote you just took, this is our only budgeted capital item in this year's budget. We are on budget. We're slightly under the 50,000 that we had allocated to complete this project. This does meet our specifications and needs, and are requesting approval.
I have a couple of questions. I'm assuming that this compressor is not portable,
Correct. It is fixed.
and it's going to be installed in a fixed position. Is it going to be at the Eureka Fire Station, or is it going to be in our fire station?
in our fire station.
Okay.
Yes.
And, okay, and I didn't see what portion of the 47,000 Eureka is going to pay, or is that our portion?
That is solely our portion. So
Okay.
my apologies if I created confusion. Eureka did a RFP for a unit at each of their stations. So there was no national purchasing agreements for these compressors currently.
Okay.
So I could not use that to present any bids tonight. So I had to either, number one, perform an RFP ourselves or piggyback onto one that was recently done.
So the Eureka reference is just to the bidding process,
sir.
not for the
Yes, sir.
usage? This
Yes.
is going to be exclusively for our use?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm sorry, that's probably my misunderstanding. Is there anybody else has any questions? Steve?
So you're saying if Eureka needs 4, they're really, the bid is for 5 of them, and by getting more than one, we're getting a better price this way, or?
No.
It's just the formality of doing an open bidding process. Yes.
This allows the city to avoid its own bidding process by piggybacking on another entity's RFP process. They've already done it, and they've interviewed and made a selection on who they should purchase it from. So we're just looking to piggyback on that and purchase it from the same vendor that they have gone through the process of selecting.
That kind of answers my question. I was asking, I was going to ask why we would piggyback Eureka as opposed to doing our own RFP. I'm guessing there's cost savings. Are there other?
You're absolutely right. Cost savings and time, frankly.
Yeah.
So currently, this has a 4-month lead time as of last week. So it gets into, can we complete this by the end of the year, going through the process? An RFP process takes us considerable time.
Yes, yeah.
The bid number that, I don't know, the vendors knew they were pitching to a fire protection district and maybe their eyes got big versus
No.
a meager little municipality like us, or?
No, and I say that because the other cities purchased off of it as well. 2 of the 3 bids that were submitted, they recommended this route to us. So that kind of reinforced our initial thoughts to piggyback on another RFP.
Okay. Sorry. Hearing no further discussion. You're looking for a motion.
Yeah, we do request a motion to approve to proceed with this purchase.
Okay. Is there a motion to proceed with this purchase?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims?
Yes.
Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderman Erger?
Yes.
Motion carries by a vote of 4-0.
Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is item D, is upfitting of the K-9 vehicle. Officer Simpson?
Thank you.
Good.
I will do my best to explain this. I haven't been part of this process, but the Brentwood Police Department utilizes the Brentwood Police Foundation to fund the K-9 program, and they have done an outstanding job for us as far as fundraising and things like that for the purchase of the K-9, the training of the K-9, the training for the K-9 handler, the half of the purchase cost for the K-9 vehicle, the other half came out of a grant, and then also the equipment that goes into that K-9 vehicle. This is kind of much more advanced than your normal patrol vehicle. There are sensors and fans and things that go into this so the vehicle doesn't overheat if the K-9 is in there. And we had the vehicle upfitted. At the time, we were transitioning from a vendor that I believe has since retired to another vendor. And we had that vendor upfit this vehicle, and come to find out the foundation does not have the money to fund this project now. So we're requesting to utilize asset forfeiture funds to pay this vendor the money that they're owed, and to continue the relationship we have with them, because they are also utilized to upfit our normal patrol vehicles.
Okay, so the plan that's being proposed is there is $25,000 budgeted for this year, 2024, for expenditures for the police department to come out of asset forfeiture. To this point, is there any other earmarked item Of that $25,000, is this the only item to this point of the
Not
year?
that I'm aware of.
Okay.
As far as I know, that's the only item.
Okay, and this is this has been budgeted for this year. The $25,000 was budgeted for this year,
Correct.
and this would be the first expenditure out of it?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, so are there questions? Steve?
The 25,000 that was already, was that allocated somewhere else for some other?
Not that I'm aware of, sir. I don't know the answer to that. I'm sorry.
And then I kind of thought that this program was created under a resolution where the expenses of this program would be paid through the foundation. Now I see that we're kind of using city funds to.
Well, the only thing I would say is that it's not exactly city funds in the sense that it is money that comes from DEA forfeiture. It's not city budget money, and it's money that can only be expended on behalf of the police force. But Officer Simpson is correct, from what I understand from the foundation, and my wife is, she's here tonight. She's also very connected with the foundation. They are engaged in continuing fundraising efforts. They have spent nearly $100,000 to this point for the things that Officer Simpson already mentioned, the acquisition of the vehicle, which also involves some grant money, which was specifically requested or asked for that kind of a vehicle. But also for the training of the officer, the acquisition of the canine officer, the outfitting, the first outfitting or the first part of the outfitting of the vehicle itself. And then also there's ongoing expenses relating to the things like dog food and things like that that are being
Veterinary
paid.
care.
Yeah, veterinary care that's being paid for, continues to be paid for out of the foundation. And the foundation has every intention of, this is a timing issue from what I understand, that the vendor that provided these services did it, and then it was determined that whether or not it could be paid for, there's just not enough money currently in the foundation to do that. They have every expectation that there will be, but it'll be a few months down the road. And so rather than risk the relationship with the vendor, they're asking the police department, and tell me if I'm wrong about this, but the police department's asking for
No, that's
the money to
correct.
be spent
Yeah,
in this
just
way.
to continue that relationship, because they are heavily involved in outfitting every one of our other vehicles. And I think it would probably be a good thing for us to continue that relationship, make good on our expense to them for the work that they've done. And
I do think that, well, I mean, I don't know what to say, other than the fact that we've said where we're at with this. Is there any other question? Yeah, Steve.
Well, I don't quite agree that the asset forfeiture funds they're solely the police use, but I think they're city funds. I mean, and I support having officers do FBI or gang unit or going off and doing that, but then that hole has to be filled of that personnel shortage, which the city has to pay for. In the case of using it here, now that I understand that time's of the essence, otherwise we're not getting outfitted for other cars, correct? I mean, if this would be constructed as a loan out of the asset forfeiture to be repaid by the foundation at a later date, I could get my mind around that, I think.
Maria, I'd recognize you if you want to speak to that. Can you speak to that? You'll have to be at the microphone, I'm sorry. There be some way for the for the board to put together like a memorandum of understanding or something to that effect that would say that they take on the responsibility of replacing this money to the asset forfeiture fund?
Our intent with the my impression that if the police fund were to be able to pay for this outfitting bill that's outstanding currently, that it's likely that as the Brentwood Police Foundation is seeing more funds come into place, we would then look to support additionally other trainings for the police officers. And certainly our goal is to expand who we're able to, how many aspects of the police officers'
The
loan that pays back exactly that amount for VIP, or if it's the same amount that's paying for specialized training for the officers.
on the idea that the asset forfeiture fund is used at times for training, is that what you
Yes,
mean?
yes.
Okay. But if there were, if the board was looking for something more specific in terms of replacement, is that something that the board, I mean, you can't speak for the other board members, is that something you'd bring up to the board to see if you can get an agreement to that effect? Okay.
The only other question is this something, once, I hate to dump it on Ways and Means again, but is this a reallocation of funds then that has to go?
Also have to go to Ways and Means.
Okay, so
So
given it
there's
has to go to
questions
Ways and
you've
Means, really-
asked.
Yeah, I mean, if this is money that's already in the budget and it's money that's being spent, so there's two steps here, I guess, or there's one step that may require some additional information.
Yes.
So with an agreement let's just assume an agreement is put in place, a memorandum, some sort of agreement that says, we pledge to do this.
Right.
It's still got to go to Ways and Means before it can be done. So of what,
It would have to go not to
import-
just Ways and Means, but the board, since the board approved the resolution. that
well, I don't mean the
states that.
resolution though. I mean,
But I don't think Ways and Means would be sufficient alone for the department to spend the money.
so what's the purpose
It's
of
a budget
Ways and Means,
amendment.
though? I mean, I know, but it's not really a budget amendment. It's within the budget. If $25,000 has been budgeted to this,
Well, expenditure still has to be approved.
I understand that, but why does it have to go to you?
Because it's a
Again.
different use.
Well, I mean, I kind of,
How is it a different use?
It's in miscellaneous contractual so one of the line items, supplies and material, has $10,000 in it. I think the memo says 25,000 from supplies and materials. I'm
No,
looking
it
at the
says
adopted,
25,000 was budgeted.
I'm looking at the budget
Oh, it was
for
only
asset
10
forfeiture. It's 10.
for 2024.
For 2024 for supplies and materials. And then there's another line item, so I'm assuming that miscellaneous contractual also has $10,000 in it. So that's 20,000. The memo says 25.
Okay.
I guess who's counting?
So well, no, I mean, I'm not trying to be flippant here. I'm seriously trying to ask the question, if the math is wrong, if the police department says they have $25,000 budgeted and they don't, that's a question. But and it has to go to the full board to be approved because of the resolution that's in place.
That's
that
the
this
only
technically
reason why I say
violates it.
that. Right.
Or at least calls it into question.
So there's really 20,000, but it's two line items. There's 10,000 in supplies and materials. There's 10,000 in miscellaneous contractual, so that's 20,000.
Okay.
There are other line items in here where the 5,000 can come from. It could come from capital.
Well, it's not, the 25,000 is not what they're spending. They're spending 11. 25,000 is what they're saying was budgeted. The expenditure is $11,000.
So you see where the error is.
I'm not sure I do. So what I'm questioning is, does it have to go to Ways and Means, or can it just go to the full board? You're saying that because,
The process which we've used
okay,
in the past has been to go to Ways and Means. So if you're introducing, let's not take it to Ways and Means.
I'm not
Oh.
introducing that. I'm trying to figure out why it has to go to Ways and Means. If it.
Means.
If Ways and Means has to approve the consolidation of two line items to cover $11,000, is that what they'd be asked to do?
It's not so much the consolidation of two line items.
Okay.
It's an expenditure that was not articulated in the budget book that we're now using for something different. That's why we take it to Ways and Means.
I don't understand why you're saying something different. That's what I don't get. I don't-
Supplies and material.
Right. How is this different than supplies and material?
For something like this, it would probably be budgeted under capital
Okay, okay.
for fitting an equipment in the vehicle.
Upfitting equipment in
Right.
the vehicle.
It would be budgeted under capital.
Okay, and
Not
the other
supplies and
line item
materials.
is,
Miscellaneous contractual.
what, and can you tell me what that means?
If you had, I don't know, a contract with a vendor for, it could be a number of things. I don't know that this would fit into it because this is for a vehicle. And we tend to budget and expend for things like this under capital expense.
Okay,
So miscellaneous contractual, it could be, so what the department use in general fund to pay for out of miscellaneous contractual is the CALIA accreditation manager. When you have a contractual agreement, a contractual relationship with another entity, when you're purchasing equipment, it's not a contractual. You're purchasing items for the installation on a vehicle. There's a clear difference between the two. Another example would be janitorial service, car wash, evidence tracking, training investigation. Those are the things that the department lists under miscellaneous contractual.
okay.
We've just been consistent in how we've brought items like this. We take it, and this is what slows the process down because we take it to, whether it's Public Works, whether it's Public Safety, then we take it to Ways and Means. That has been our practice, at least as long as I've been here.
Okay. So it's got to go to Ways and Means so that it can be considered where this money comes from.
Right.
I mean, the claim
And
that
they've
it's-
stated
the
where it's
claim that
coming
been-
from.
The claim that that's been budgeted, you're sort of disputing that.
I'm not disputing that.
Okay.
They've budgeted for supplies and material.
Right.
And then they've budgeted also another 10,000 in miscellaneous contractual, but in their memo, it says, and let me pull it up.
And these are asset forfeiture funds.
The 2024 Brentwood Police Department budget has $25,000 allotted for supplies and materials in the asset forfeiture category.
Okay.
That's what their memo says.
That doesn't match what you're
It
reading.
doesn't match what was adopted in the budget book. It says supplies and materials, $10,000. There's money. There's
Oh, but
money in
I
asset
understand
forfeiture.
wanting to keep it all straight.
Right.
So maybe the problem is in the difference between the memo and what's in the actual budget?
That's one
Maybe
difference.
that is a Ways and Means thing? I don't know. Is it a Ways and Means thing?
I'm sure Nancy would pick up on it.
You know, if I think of this process, I kind of view net result is going to be some kind of change in the budget, even if it's just
Right.
moving one line to another.
Right.
And I think Ways and Means is an appropriate forum for that, whereas here I view more of, is it philosophical about,
Right.
you know, is this
Right.
a policy we want to get behind? And I think we would have an opportunity probably to vet out Alderman Lockmueller's suggestion, you know, look at the numbers versus
Yeah.
is this the right thing, you know, in the first place?
Okay, so as far as public safety is concerned, I think that's a good distinction. As far as public safety is concerned, can I get a motion to recommend to the full Board of Aldermen an expenditure out of the asset forfeiture category to cover the final upgrading of the K-9 officer vehicle with the understanding that the Brentwood Police Foundation would replace that money as they are able.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion of that motion itself? Not the issue of where the money's coming from, specifically what lines, because that'll be handled very ably by Ways and Means, but the philosophical
Power and the glory.
discussion, exactly right. And you're welcome to it. So with all that in mind, if there's no further discussion, roll call?
Alderman Plufka?
Yes.
Alderwoman Sims? Alderman Lockmiller?
Yes.
Alderman Erger?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
motion carries by 4-0.
Thank you very much, and thank you for that. I know you were standing in with not a lot of information, so I appreciate that very much. Thank you. Item E is the Brazu Avenue parking restrictions.
This one in anticipation for the special event that's on April 6th. We looked at the road. I took some measurements. We know we're going to have to do some sort of parking restrictions to be able to keep a clean aisle and clear aisle so that, you know, if you had an emergency, you can get in and out of there. So what we were wanting to do is put no parking along that southern edge of Brazu and then continue going northwardly along the east side, at least past the park. You know, it might be easier just to run it all the way up to East Pendleton. So that would be the temporary signage. Then the permanent signage would be some derivation, maybe a little bit different than that. I thought you'd probably still keep it at least from its intersection with Brentwood Boulevard, Brazu, and then up to the entrance, and then probably a little bit past it, past the dumpster, at least to the fire hydrant. We did hand out flyers to the folks that live on the west side. I don't know if they've parked on both sides in the past. You know, the street was a lot shorter in the past, you know, just barely went past East Pendleton. Now it goes all the way around to Brentwood Boulevard. So I know we need to do something. We'll investigate after the event to see how best to keep everything cleaned. I'll look at the sight distance formula to figure out what the minimum is, you know, based on the speed limit and from that entrance, that is. But basically just wanted to bring to you that we will be asking for parking changes like we typically do, you know, and then we'll do an ordinance and then it'll be codified. So I don't know if there's anybody that had any objections to doing this. This would, like I said, temporary, the Friday before the Saturday event. Then moving forward, we know we're going to have special events there. How crowded is it going to be? Whenever I counted the parking lot itself, there's 61 regular stalls, 3 ADA compliant, and then one like loading, you know, like for vans. So probably most of the time when people are using the playground, it's probably sufficient, but special events like this, it's going to spill out onto the streets. The other streets to the north already have prohibitions, whether it's Anna, East Pendleton. I know there's going to be parking along Russell. You cannot park on the north side of Russell. We made sure we put the sign back up when the contractor removed it. So that north edge of Russell between Bremerton and Brentwood Boulevard's already signed, and that's already in the code. So there's more for information, but we'll be bringing additional information probably at the next meeting.
Okay. Questions? Anybody? No? Yeah, Sonny?
Where are the aldermanic parking stalls?
I will leave that to parks. I'm just public works.
I'm kidding.
I'm sure Eric will have
I'm
VIP
kind of
ones.
kidding. I'm mostly kidding.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we were actually going to put some barricades up for police and fire because I know they'll have a presence there, and we want to make sure that we give them ample parking before the event.
Okay, thank you. And then item F?
Yes, the street sweeper schedule, we were asked to look at possibly doing additional sweeping that we don't already have in the list. So if you go back to March 13th, 2019, the Public Works Committee had us prepare a list of streets where we would be sweeping on a routine basis, you know, Monday through Friday. We had posted that, you know, years ago. We did maintain that schedule for the most part. Then in 2023, the sweeper failed. You know, it's a 2006. We wound up selling it just because the cost of repairing it was so expensive. So since 2023, we've had to borrow another sweeper to do sweeping at least once or twice a year. So we did do sweeping at least twice in 2023. And then we're sweeping right now. We started Monday. doing the area around the park. We want to make sure we got Brazos and Russell and all those streets. I know we started moving northwardly. I know we've done like Ruth, Helen, all the streets like to the north of Manchester, but to the east of Brentwood Boulevard. And then we have a new list, which will just keep creeping northwardly up Brentwood Boulevard. And eventually, tomorrow should be urban, Spanish, woodsy, that neck of the woods. And then Friday, we can use it a little bit, then we have to return it. After a week, back in Maplewood, since it's their sweeper, they'll let us use it a second time, and then we'll use it for whichever streets we didn't get in this last go-round.
Is there any explanation as to, in the 2019 listing, as to why Brentwood Forest and Whitehall Court and York Hills and York Village are not included?
Brentwood Forest is included. If you look at the screenshot that I included on there, you can probably barely read it, but Brentwood Forest, it's just the publicly owned streets. So you've got High School, Wrenwood, Swan Circle, Eager.
Where
But-
is Wrenwood on that schedule in 2019?
It's not like
Day of the
listed
week.
in there. It's just Ward 4, we just do a little bit here or there. Greenwood Group is the group that does most of the maintenance as far as cleaning up grass clippings and leaves and all that. They've got a whole dedicated group that picks up leaves and debris versus individuals like single family. We've seen people just blow leaves and stuff into the right of way. They shouldn't, but they do. Here, they've got a dedicated group that cleans it. So we only go through once in a while and clean Brentwood Forest.
But it's not on the 2019 listing.
Right, but it is on the website if you look. It just says street sweeping by request only for High School, Swan Circle. That's on the website.
Okay.
So if like Brentwood Forest said, hey, High School's got debris, and Eager's a weird road because it's a dividing line between us and Richmond Heights.
Sure.
So we're not typically gonna just sweep half of it, we'll sweep both sides, loop around. But typically, we don't have to sweep Eager Road.
So who makes the request? You said it's by request. Who makes the request?
You can do a MyGov ticket. You can do one right now for like in front of your house if there's a patch.
Okay. I mean, not in front of my house. I mean, are you?
Right, we have never done the private. I checked with staff that have been here 30 years. So if it's Whitehall, if it's York Village, we've never done it.
Okay.
The only thing we've always done is plowing
The
snow.
idea that, so on the idea that it's a maintenance issue of the street, and the city doesn't own the street.
Correct. We don't own the street, and you're right. Maintenance-wise, we don't do anything. We don't fill potholes. We don't, the only time we've ever been involved in maintenance would be like snow plowing. If we damaged a curb, then we would fix the curb.
So I was curious, I was reading social media with regard to the street sweeping schedule. It's on the Brentwood Facebook site, and almost all of the comments talk about the fact that this is such a great service because it improves public safety from the standpoint of pedestrians, kids, and adults, and those sweet gum ball seeds that can, cause people injury and things like that. That's almost all the comments. The other thing I would ask is, I mean, if those same seed pods, which are everywhere, get down into the sewer system, those can be a problem for the storm sewers in terms of clogging them, things like that, causing additional need for maintenance. So I guess what I'm asking to the committee itself is whether or not this is truly a street maintenance issue, or is it more akin to snow plowing, in the sense that this is as much a safety issue as anything else?
Yeah, me personally, I didn't see as much as a safety thing as like snow and ice. Snow and ice is snow and ice. Leaves and gumballs, it's not on every street.
Right. Okay. Does anybody on the committee want to weigh in on this?
Well, I'll just,
Have to,
regarding sweet gum balls, I think we clean up sweet gum balls because they're our city trees, right? Producing the sweet gum balls.
Recently, as we had the sweeper, yes, we've been cleaning those up
But I mean, that's,
in the public rights of way.
I don't know, do we have a tree line? I'm asking this as a question, a tree line on these streets that are currently private. Does the city have right of way? Does the city have
so,
tree maintenance?
no, and it's a good question. So with regard to letting snowplows into York Village, Whitehall Court, places like that, there is not, but perhaps should be, a waiver. I don't know that the Board of Trustees in York Village or in York Hills or in Whitehall Court would need to sign some sort of waiver because the snowplows on occasion will cause damage to curbs, and I mean, it happen everywhere. But it happens in York Village as well, and there's no waiver on file. This would be a similar thing, I think, before the street sweeper would come into, they'd have to sign some sort of waiver and agree that the city's not responsible for caused as a result of the street sweepers. I just started thinking about this. I see both sides of it. I really do. I just thought it was worthy of at least a discussion and conversation. I didn't know that that Brentwood Forest contracts for its own. Do they contract for street sweeping?
I can't speak for street sweeping, but yeah, we do work with Greenwood Group for all of our landscaping services, and I've been in there 7 years now, and I don't have much of a complaint for the streets. They always seem to be clean. Greenwood does a really good job, so I think doing the main streets, like you mentioned, high schools, Swan, etc. If we could keep that going, that'd be great. But yeah, I don't think too many people are complaining about
Okay.
the streets now. So
I just, it's the thing that bothers me, and maybe it bothers me too much, but all the residents of Brentwood are entitled to all of the services of the city of Brentwood. And I don't really understand the distinction. We get assessed every now and again for new streets. We get assessed for street surfacing, potholes, all that kind of stuff. We take care of all of that. I don't know that I consider a street sweeper to be necessarily a maintenance issue as much as it is, if it's only done a couple times a year, that it is more of a public safety issue. I don't know why, because we're in a neighborhood that owns its own streets, that we wouldn't necessarily be entitled to the same service that everybody else in Brentwood enjoys. So I feel like I'm in the absolute minority here. So I won't bother making any kind of motion. I appreciate you guys taking the time to have the discussion.
I remember, because I think we were on that first year we were on the board together, that I don't think you guys were getting snow plowing or anything that. And
Right.
I mean, you made a good point for snow plowing being a public safety issue, and that fire department and police need to be able to get back there for those type of situations. I'm just, sweet sweeping, I think, is more of a cosmetic
Okay.
application than a public safety.
Okay. I mean, I appreciate you indulging me, putting it on the agenda, and listening to me rant for a couple of minutes. So I do appreciate that. I'm not going to make a motion. Anybody else have anything else they wanted to pile on or add as they see fit? Thank you, Dan, for putting that together. I appreciate it. And with that, we are at our second citizen comments section. Is there anybody in the audience or online that wishes to address this committee with regard to any issues of public safety? If so, you'll be granted 3 minutes. There is nobody online, so I declare the citizen comments section closed, and seeing no other items on this agenda, I declare this meeting adjourned.